All right. I'm just a little curious as to who was paying attention. For that first reading, who was it about? Who was the first reading about? I should pick on an adult in the back. Shouldn't I? Yeah. I'm just kidding. I won't. Yeah. Ding. Adam, Eve, and the serpent. Correct answer. Thank you. Now, I wanted to start with that because sometimes to really understand Mary, we need to take a step back and understand Eve. See, the feast day today, the Immaculate Conception of Mary, is when we're remembering that for the perfect motherhood that is Mary, she needed to be born without sin. That is what we're celebrating today, Mary being born without sin so that she could be the perfect mother to Jesus and us all. And for that, we got to take a step back and think about Eve. Because we heard about her and the serpent, Genesis chapter 3. And as a matter of fact, some people are a little unfair to Eve. They blame the entire fall of humanity on Eve. And I've always thought that was unfair. It is Adam and Eve that fail together. I think that's very important. I just learned something new, a couple of weeks ago. Never noticed this before. Did you ever notice that in Genesis chapter 2, God tells Adam, do not eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He says that to Adam and Adam alone. Eve was not made yet. He creates Eve immediately after that. So Eve never heard from God, don't eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Never noticed that before. And Eve, when she explains what she's doing with the serpent, she doesn't get her facts straight. She said, well, I'll die if I even look at the fruit, which isn't something that God said. So it strongly implies that God told Adam something, and then Adam did his best to update Eve on the rule on that, but it wasn't quite there. So let's remember that Eve and Adam were operating on different information, and I just think that's so interesting. But it doesn't really change the end of the story. Eve eats the fruit, Adam eats the fruit with her, they're purged out of paradise, etc. And what that means is Adam and Eve are our first earthly parents, all right? They are the start to our life here on earth, our earthly life where we're going to sin because they sinned, and we have to work for our living because they did, and life ain't going to be perfect, as it might have been had things been different. So that is our earthly life. We can actually say that Adam and Eve are our parents. This is a slightly more technical way of saying it. We share a common nature with Adam and Eve. Okay? And common is not bad. It just means things that we all have in common together. All right? All of us need to eat food. That is part of our common nature as human beings. All right? It's not like 1 in 10 people can photosynthesize. No, we all have to eat food. We all sleep. And unfortunately, another part of our common nature, the thing that we all share, is we are all prone to sin. We are all going to sin sooner or later. All right? You could actually say that it is unnatural for a human being to live their entire life without sinning. If someone told you that, you'd be like, really? They never sinned in 86 years? That doesn't sound right. That's Adam and Eve, all right, our first parents. And then we think of Jesus and Mary as something altogether new. Sometimes we call Christ the second Adam, and sometimes we call Mary the new Eve, because Eve gave birth to us in our earthly life, and Mary has given birth to us in our spiritual life, of course, through Jesus. Jesus is the second Adam. He reconsecrates all of us to God. That is what Jesus does that Adam did not do. And Mary is a part of that process. So, with Mary and Jesus, we are born to that perfect life with God that we are truly destined to be at. So that means a life without sickness, a life without death, and most importantly, perhaps, is a life without sin. That is our destiny. That is what we are made for on a certain level. And I'm sorry to say, guys, we're not there yet. We are not there yet. This world we're living in today is clearly not a world that is free from sin. All right? I could punch everybody in the front row right now, but we don't have time. But seriously, I could sin right now. Any one of you could sin 5 minutes from now. There is nothing stopping you from doing that, technically. And that is proof enough that where we are now is not where we're meant to be. But with Jesus Christ and with the Immaculate Conception of Mary, the sinlessness of Mary, we are elevated to something higher. Remember how I said it's unnatural for a person to make it their whole life without sin? Yeah, I was hoping for a yes. I said it like 3 minutes ago. Jesus and Mary were unnatural in the way that they were without sin. They were supernatural, and it's a reminder, again, the sinlessness of Jesus and Mary is a reminder that God don't play by our rules. It's way more accurate to say that we play by God's rules. So when God says, through my Son Jesus Christ and the Virgin Mary, I, through my grace, will free them from all sin. It is not the natural way. It is something greater than the natural way. But because it happened with them, and with Jesus being the new Adam and Mary being the new Eve, we are most certainly on our way to that everlasting life where we one day will not have to worry about death, sickness, or sin itself. That's the thing about Mary. I just want to wrap up real quick with Eucharistic adoration. I shared this with a couple of classes. I wanted to just say it to everybody. You know, I think one of the questions one of the teachers asked me in a field was, Father Justin, what should the kids do if they get bored at Mass? Can they sleep? No, you're not here to sleep. Can they goof off? I'd rather they didn't. Well, Father Justin, if they're struggling with the Mass or the Eucharistic adoration, what are they supposed to do? And my most honest answer to that is if you're having trouble, you can always pray. You can always talk to God. That is never a sin. All right? So if the priest is being really confusing, or if you don't understand what he's saying at the altar, and you just can't keep your mind focused on exactly what the priest is focusing on, at the absolute very least, you can always offer up a prayer to God. And when we're in Eucharistic adoration, I forgot how long every class will be here for, but you know what? If you're just sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, I don't know what to do, I don't recommend sleeping, and I don't recommend goofing off. There are better times for those things. I recommend that you offer up God a prayer, and if you can't think of anything else to pray for, say thank you. Okay? If you have nothing else to say, just say thanks to God. That is not a waste of your time. All right? My spiritual director, people in the seminary, they have told us, priests, they said, if you run out of prayers, make sure you say thank you. If you say thank you and you have nothing else to say, that's not so bad. But if you're with Christ and you haven't said thank you yet, it's probably fair to say that you've skipped a step. So with that, I sincerely hope that we all have a joyful and holy day, because again, we're in Advent, we are preparing for Christmas. So whatever happens for the rest of the morning, may the Holy Spirit be with you, and may you grow in faith, hope, and love through what we're doing here today.